Most people who suffer with migraines have never had their ankles checked, and why would they? But this is the story of a soccer player who came to a chiropractor with some hip pain and things like that, and discovered that her issues were really coming from her ankles, and it was affecting the alignment of her whole spine. So, this is a fantastic episode all about getting clear, getting connected. Thanks for joining me on this episode of What Chiropractic Doesn't Cure. I'm your host and chiropractic advocate, Jenna Quinton, founder of Adjust Your Media, and I look forward to telling you this story from Dr. Austin Davis. So today, my guest on What Chiropractic Doesn't Cure is a multi-generational chiropractor who is focused on helping folks achieve the quality of life that they deserve. And his passion is fueled by his own experience with chiropractic care, how it helped him to recover from a serious sports-related injury. And then what is also fun is a couple years ago, he moved from San Francisco and built a brand new practice in Missoula, Montana. So welcome,
That's
Dr.
right.
Austin Davis.
Hey, Jenna, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited. Let's get into this. Tell us a story. Who got better under chiropractic care?
Well, I was thinking about that prompt, and there's thankfully so many stories that could be told. But you did bring up something in my intro about sports injury. So it just immediately clicked with a patient who it was an athlete, still is an athlete, but was a collegiate athlete. And what's amazing is she had come in for, I believe it was something run of the mill, a hip soreness or something like that, which, quite frankly, a lot of people come in for something very simple. A shoulder hurts, they have a headache, and it's just a fundamental misunderstanding of what chiropractic, the power of true chiropractic, but it still is perfect that they're coming in and seeking help. And I love that aspect of it. So this woman come in again for something, a hip or something like that. Now, as a chiropractor, my focus and my purpose is systemic health and wellness, connection to the self and to the source, and increasing the communication within. So I meet everybody where they're at, and we definitely address chief complaint. That being said, I'm always going to do a full workup analysis because there's so many components to what actually creates a high functioning system outside of direct major trauma. You fall off a ladder onto your hip, we can kind of point to that as being, yes, your hip is probably messed up. But these sort of insidious onset, don't know where it came from, chronic things, in my experience, and I've only been doing this 15 years or so, rarely is it one thing that's doing all of it. Now, doing the workup, I started to look at her history, and I noticed she was a collegiate athlete. She was a star soccer player, D1 soccer player. She's 28 years old now. This was a couple of years ago. And on the intake form, she had listed headaches, migraine, neck pain, jaw pain, arm weakness, tingling. And I remember asking her, I said, look, we're going to check your hip, but I noticed all of this. What's going on with that? I'm assuming from soccer, you've taken some falls, or maybe you fell with your arm outstretched or something. And she said, in her words, actually, of course, I've taken some slide tackles, some falls, but nothing terrible where I ended up with a concussion or head or neck pain or arm pain. It just sort of built over time. And I said, well, tell me more about the migraines. And a little bit of my history is from that injury I sustained. I was left with crippling migraines, terrible migraines. And mine was sort of direct trauma, but it walked me down the path of understanding migraines better, because I get a lot of patients with migraine, and a lot of times they've seen medical doctors or they've seen specialists, and their response is either some people get migraines, or it's food, or it's your environment, or it's stress, or the worst I've heard is we don't really know what causes migraines. We just know people get them, and here's some solutions for the symptoms. So we started digging into it, and as we were doing the exam, her ankles were so out of place, locked up. Now, for the listening audience, we are entering a realm that some people would call not chiropractic because it's extremity work. For me, I'm going to talk about this because I am a chiropractor. I do work with athletes, and part of that is extremity work. I make adjustments to extremities based on the classical definition of chiropractic being a subluxation, which interferes directly with the nervous system. It might not fall into that category for everybody, and I get that. I am making adjustments to fixated segments, in this case, extremities. Now, I asked her about her ankles, and she said she has rolled her ankles, as she put it, 100 times. So whatever that means, let's call it a dozen times of severe ankle problems. Well, doing a basic gait analysis, you could see this chain of events where the ankles, there's no dorsal and plantar flexion, tibia is fixated over talus, calcaneus isn't moving, and she gets this sort of Frankenstein walk, and that's throwing off her knee, her hip, her shoulder, all the way up, zigzagging to where her occiput is just twisted out of place. So I asked her what she's been doing for migraines, and her medical team, dating back to college, couldn't figure it out because they changed her diet. They changed just about everything they could figure. She never really had chiropractic care, and they landed on Botox, and they started shooting Botox into her face and scalp every 6 or 8 weeks or something like that, like 13 or 18 injections around her face and scalp. And they basically phrased it as, this is going to help you and you'll look really pretty. It'll be really nice cosmetically. And she wasn't as satisfied with that answer, but was like, it seems to help. So I asked her, did they give you a long-term outlook on that? You're 28 years old. Are you planning on just injecting botulism into your face for the next 60, 70 years? She said, well, this is the only thing I've come up with that has actually helped a little bit. So I told her, I said, well, I want you to know, I've had migraines. I understand the complexity of migraines when the skull's off axis and the foramen magnum, that big hole, soft spot in the back, is kicked out of place, and you're getting brainstem pressure, and C1, C2 start to deviate, and you get real subluxation in that upper cervical complex. You start to get arterial blood flow being impinged or interfered, and you're cutting off communication, blood flow, so food and fuel to the brain. It will freak out. And this is a very basic explanation for migraines, but obviously there's environmental and food and all kinds of factors, but you cut off communication, food and fuel to the brain, you're going to have major problems. So I said, have you ever considered that it's not just the upper cervical misalignment, but it's this chain of events stemming from your ankles? And for one, she said, I've never heard of anything like this. I never would have thought of anything like this. I've been to experts. I've been to everybody. Not one person has ever done an evaluation of the whole body. They just look where it hurts. And I said, well, what we're going to do is we're going to check everything. I am going to make the adjustments to the occiput, to the C1, C2. We're also going to do a lot of ankle work and work the chain all the way up through. So cleared the occiput, cleared C1, cleared C2, and then set the ankles and did ankle mobility work with her. Within this initial 2-week period, her migraines essentially went from daily migraine, where she just sort of lived in a cloud, to the clouds parting. She said, I know they're not gone. And I know this is not the end of any process, but first time ever I've woken up with energy. First time I feel clear through my day. First time I feel like interacting with people. My hunger level has changed. And she said, it's really coming from my ankles? And we set on her occiput and atlas actually held very well after the first adjustment. We did a lot of ankle mobility and ankle adjusting. And within the month, these migraines have essentially resolved. She is now 2 years from when she first came in, has not had a single Botox injection, has not had a single issue with a migraine since. Now, she's had some headaches and these kind of things, but that's a dehydration issue and a stress issue, and there's other things. But the whole dynamic has shifted. The way she functions throughout the day has shifted. The way she interacts with herself and her community has shifted. She feels, as she put it, like she's once again part of the world, where previously she felt just adrift. And this is something that's very real for a lot of athletes, is you're a part of something great when you're on a team or solo if you're tennis, but you have your coaches and your trainers. You feel like you're part of something great and you're used as a tool for greatness. And unless you are one of the select few that make it pro, at some point that phase of your life ends and your whole support team, your physical support team, your nutrition, all that team sort of moves on. And they find another athlete and you're left with this feeling of a disconnect, both emotionally and physically. And for her, that had all culminated in this essentially migraines. And it was really a manifestation of some physical, structural, and also a lot of neurological, emotional. And as we started to clear that, she, like I said, feels for the first time in years like she has a purpose, like she is a part of something. And it has, according to her, saved her life with something that is relatively simple. It's migraine. Lots of people suffer from this. This is not Parkinson's or some major disorder where you're on major meds and go through surgeries. It's migraines. It's kind of falls into this bin of like, oh, day-to-day crap. It's migraine. But it affects people in a really important way because they now are operating at such a low vibrational level, coming from especially these athletes being such a high vibrational level for so long that it really upends their life. And through chiropractic, we didn't change her diet, we didn't change her exercise, we didn't change her day-to-day practices. We just reconnected herself to her source, both emotionally, neuromuscular, and structural, and let innate, the inborn intelligence take over and help her see that she's got everything she needs within her. It had just gotten tuned down to a point that it was mute. And there's always a chemical that can hyperexcite or hypoexcite or alter. But that's like the way I explain to patients, it's like paying the interest rate on your credit card. You'll get through a month, couple months, you'll get through a couple of years. But if you're not addressing the principle, eventually it catches up with you and then puts you underwater, and then you're in a really bad place. So that was the story that came to mind when you asked me that.
I love that. So one thing that I love to do is to put studies in the show notes, and anybody who looks will see just how serious migraines are for so many people. It's one of I think it's like the third leading cause of disability around the world. People who can't function, who can't think, like you said, just operating at their lowest level, their lowest vibrational frequency that they can, just making it through. And I'll put it in the show notes, different studies that have been done that back up the thousands and thousands of people who have been in chiropractic offices and have had their lives changed. So I have had migraines. I started having migraines when I was 8 years old. And like you said, all of the things like, are you dehydrated? Is it hormonal? Like all of these things, but boiling it down very simply, like you said, to the anatomy and the alignment. And then how is that affecting neurology? How is that affecting everything? I had a family member who had a head injury this week, actually. And when they were checked by a chiropractor, they said exactly what you did, of that chain reaction of, we still, even though the kid's song tells us the knee bone's connected to the thigh bone, nobody thinks about that, right? Nobody thinks about, oh, my hips. We don't think about, well, should we check ankles? And then should we see how that's affecting all the way up? And what is going on up here? How is that affecting all the way down? So I think that is such an important thing for the general public to realize, of just how much everything is affected. It isn't just hips. It isn't just one thing, it's everything. So I do want to ask you, because you're always a straight shooter. So did chiropractic cure this lady?
It's an important question. Having been brought up in very principled chiropractic and very straightforward chiropractic, my answer is no, in the sense of chiropractic is the process of clearing interference. And that interference can be structural, can be very simple on paper interference, but it's that neuroemotional connection that the way I always look at it is that chiropractic creates the environment for innate intelligence to thrive. So chiropractic created the pathway for her to then allow her innate intelligence to guide her to her purest, truest form. So the question is did chiropractic cure this? No, chiropractic provided the building blocks for her body, for her innate intelligence to do the work it needs to do to get her to where she needs to be. That being said, it is directly because of chiropractic, but it's her innate and it's her body doing the work. Because I don't know any other primary healthcare, any other system that does that other than chiropractic. And that's why I'm a chiropractor. And I looked at going into physical therapy when I was an athlete because it saved my life. And I'm very thankfully from a family of chiropractors. So I knew about chiropractic, but I thought maybe I'll probably more suited to sports therapy when I was in school, before chiropractic school, because of how it helped me with injuries and this kind of thing. But it was my father, Dr. Alan Davis, who said, well, if that's the route you're thinking of going, why? Why do you want to do that? And so I want to help people do X, Y, Z. And he said, okay, but what are the other factors that go into X, Y, Z? And we just kept breaking it down until it basically landed on central nervous system controls all function. So he said, well, if you want to make the biggest impact, wouldn't you want to work with the system that controls all systems? And that was an easy yes. He said, great, that's chiropractic. And on its scientific form, that's chiropractic, is you get to work with the system that controls all systems. Now, the power of that is that all systems doesn't just mean cardiac, respiratory, digestive, lymphatic, muscular. That means the systems that control all function. And our body being a chemistry set of chemicals and electrical impulses, those systems control how we operate in this world, how we perceive this world, how we interact with others, how we interact with ourselves, our mood, and how we choose to exist in this life. So the adjustment to clear the interference has very biologic, very scientific components, but it has very esoteric and very, as we've talked about, neuroemotional components, which has become more and more prevalent as now that I'm a father, I think about the guy who drives my kid's bus in the morning.
Yes.
I hope he feels good. More importantly, I hope that his mind, body, soul are in clear communication and connection so he doesn't get behind the wheel all subluxated, disjointed, disconnected from life, which is hard to put on paper when you're doing an intake form. But he has the impact now on my family. And I always say I make an adjustment, not just for the person, but for the community, because we all are in this deal. We're woven into this fabric together. And as we clear interference in one person, it clears it in all people. And that was the importance of chiropractic for me in terms of the power of chiropractic.
Yeah, and I think one of the key words that you've said multiple times, and it's one of my favorite words in connection with chiropractic, is clear. And it's because it's such a simple word, not using an expensive word when a direct, perfect word will do. So clear, and it's something that, yes, people don't put on their intake form necessarily, I feel fuzzy, I feel clouded, but we do. And I know even like the day after I've had a migraine, that is my feeling, is that hungover cloud. And it affects all of the relationships. It affects how I'm driving on the road, all of those things. But I hear again and again and again in testimonials where patients will spontaneously say that how they feel is clear. After I get adjusted, that is the main thing that I love. Yes, I know that every adjustment makes me better, makes my function improved, helps me to reach that potential. But the identifiable thing of me being better is when I sit down and I go, I'm so calm and I'm not a calm person. And
Right.
I'm so zen and I'm not usually zen. And I just feel clear, like, oh, I can think and
Yeah.
I can do all of those things because just like you said, all of the functions are mastered, are coordinated by the nervous system. And so I love the word clear because it isn't just something that chiropractors say, where they're like, we want you to live clear and connected. And it's not a hype word, it's actually coming from patients who are saying that.
Oh, I have a big neon sign in my office that literally just says clear and connected. And after every adjustment, I tell the patient, I go, you are clear and connected. And there's a tremendous importance in that. That clarity is, like you said, simple in its wording, but the way I look at it is when the body operates, if you are not clear, if you are fogged over, disconnected, where something like, oh, I have to go into town, is traffic going to be overwhelming? Is talking to the cashier going to be overwhelming? Is talking to my son's teacher going to be overwhelming? Talking to myself? You start to get into that out of parasympathetic, into sympathetic fight or flight, because then your body goes, everything is detrimental. Everything is a threat to me right now. So I need to protect myself. And then you're spiking adrenaline, cortisol, the body goes inflammatory, peristalsis of the gut shuts down. You end up with this whole cascade effect of survival mechanisms that are meant for emergency, but 98% of our population, or whatever the percentage of people not getting adjusted, live in. And that becomes the norm. And then you just expect all people are sort of assholes and everything's too loud and everything's too busy. Now, I live in a small Montana town where thankfully things are slower, but it's still traffic and shopping and there's still stuff. That clarity is also shifting that body back to parasympathetic, where you can process, you can adapt. So for me, the definition of health is a person's ability to adapt. And that adaptation is the best form of clear. I am clear, meaning I can adapt at such a high capacity that my body can take on stress or take on the jerk who cut me off at a stoplight, or the music that's too loud in a restaurant, or my kid that is interrupting every 4 seconds, which we love our kids and they're the sweetest things in the world. But there are times where they're like, Papa, come look at this. Papa, come look at this. Papa. And you're like, okay, dude, give me one thing. And it doesn't shift my system back from parasympathetic sympathetic into this sympathetic fight or flight, where now all of my systems shift. I can go, okay, I am clear. I know what this is. This is just a loud noise. This is just an inconvenience. This is something my body can totally adapt to. I don't have to shift all of my systems chemically and emotionally. I can still maintain my high vibration, my high level of function, and deal with stress, because there's no adjustment that removes stress. There's no meditation that stress exists, and that's physical, chemical, and emotional stress. And if people say, no, I can meditate my way out of all of it, gravity is stress. You're not going to meditate your way out of gravity.
Yeah.
And that might be a limiting mentality, maybe one day. But for the reality of the situation is there's always stress in our lives. And knowing that it's always going to be there, it's in what systems can we put in place that we can live clear through those stressful times so that we can still operate at our peak potential.
Yes, yes. So I want to know a little bit more about how you have shared your stories and shared all of this principle and this concept now that you have moved to a new place, a new town. One thing that I have noticed that you've shared is how you've collaborated with other businesses to spread the story. So tell us a little bit more about how you've shared stories in Missoula.
So I operate very simply, and you know this, we've talked, I operate very simply. I'm not saying it's the right move for everybody, but what has worked for me is getting out into the community and doing the things I love doing, and then utilizing really simple social media connections at first until we develop some kind of communication relationship. But if I go to, like, I play hockey here, where I'll go a couple times a week and I'll do a picture of Glacier Ice Arena, and I say getting in my cardio or going to church or something like that, or ice church, right? And I'll tag them, post it on Instagram from my business page. And the majority of the time I'll get either whoever I tag to write back to me, hey, doc, thanks for posting that. And then once I get a response, that's where I'll start to go, hey, I noticed you guys do these pop-ups on the weekend for like learn to skate for kids. You ever have a chiropractor show up? And that goes one of a few ways. They either go, never thought about it. Mm-hmm. And then, are you open to it? And let's say the best case scenario is go, yeah, that sounds amazing. We'd love to have you come. And then they put up on their page, learn to skate. Dr. Austin Davis from Life Chiropractic will be here providing care, blah, 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 blah. We go from there. Now, sometimes they go, that's not in our budget or something like that. And that's where being a DE chiropractor, a dynamic essentials chiropractor comes in. I go, no, I'd like to just volunteer to be there to help the kids. And then they go, that sounds amazing. And they put me up on their little website, my logo, come see Dr. Austin. Now, sometimes they go, well, and this isn't just with the ice rink. I do this at a lot of businesses, a lot of events, a lot of fairs. I'm going to be it's called 40 over 40. And it's these series of performances of dance and music. And I think most chiropractors wouldn't be like, oh, I should probably contact this local theater that's doing the dance performances to see if they need a chiropractor. But I just reached out. And what I said was, I'd like to do this. And they said, we don't have the budget for it. And I said, that's fine. I'll volunteer. And they said, well, we also don't really promote or let people sell things. And I said, I'll tell you what, I will show up without an office shirt on. I will not mention, I don't have anything for them to pre-purchase. I don't have any programs. I go, let me just adjust them. I said, now, often they will say, hey, this was really wonderful. Where's your office? I said, are you comfortable with me telling them where my office is? And 10 out of 10, they go, oh, that's fine. We just don't want someone there being like, oh, to get adjusted, just sign up for this consultation at my. So there's no bait and switch. So what I end up doing is going to river cleanups and events in the park and theaters. And I just did this at an HVAC company. And I said, look, if you don't want me to promote anything, I won't. I just want the opportunity to help people. And it sometimes scrambles their circuits because they're like, well, everybody wants, this is a capitalistic world. You must want something. I said, look, I feel blessed to have the abundance that I have in my life. And if it means giving more than getting, I'm always comfortable with that because it's 2024. There should be no person on this planet that doesn't know what chiropractic is as a term. There should be no one that doesn't understand what chiropractic is as a practice. And everyone should feel like they have access to the care they need on a regular basis. And for people to just fall into these antiquated, relatively broken healthcare systems because that's just the way it goes is unacceptable. And if it means me taking time on my day off, which there are no days off, showing up for an hour at a skating rink or a HVAC company or the back of a restaurant and setting a table up, just saying, I'm just here to make sure that you guys are clear and connected so you can be at the top of your game and truly understand what it means to really vibrate at a high level. I'm always happy to do it. Now, the vast majority of the time we end up with new patients. We end up with people that didn't even work there that told friends, the employees told friends, hey, this chiropractor showed up. This is the best I've ever felt. And they'll tell me, they go, how much did it cost? Oh, he didn't even charge us, but his office is down the road. And so I put myself into the community in a simple service capacity because this is my community. And I want these people to be at the top of their game because it makes the entire community better. And from that, we generate a lot of interest and a lot of attention. It takes sweat equity. It takes a lot of work. It takes a very understanding family structure that on a weekend, on a day off, after office hours, there's times where I'll go at 7 p.m. after I'm done at the office for an hour to be somewhere. And thankfully, my wife is incredibly supportive and understands my mission and my vision for what the community should look like, what chiropractic can do. And so I have that freedom to do that. And that's why I say it doesn't work for everybody because it takes a lot of effort and a lot of understanding from your own community to allow that to happen.
Well, I love that because you had experience of running a successful practice and then, starting it all over. And I love that aspect of just you moving into the community, saying, this is my community. I'm from here. I'm raising my family here. And yeah, that service capacity. And it is so simple, just telling that story and doing it in such a practical way. It's, writers are always talking about showing, not just telling. And that's exactly what you're doing, is you're not saying the nervous system is the master system. You're like, here, let me show you.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's been the key. And then the times that I can't get out into the wild, as I put it, very simply, I get on Instagram and I will search for hashtags. Missoula is where I live. They call it Zootown. So I'll do hashtag Zootown, hashtag Missoula, and I'll do a search. Simple engagement. And there's no salesmanship. Yes. There's no used car salesman. I don't get on and see that someone posted a sandwich from the deli down the street and go, hey, that's a great sandwich. I'm a local chiropractor. Chiropractic helps with digestion. You should come in. I'll comment. And this is more of direct marketing, in my opinion, for me, where I'll just comment, oh my God, that's one of my favorite places. It's down the street from my office. I go there a lot, period.
Yes,
that's
perfect.
it. And I think unless you're like a hardcore influencer, comments that pop up, I feel like get people really excited. I get excited when I see that little bubble where I'm like, oh, I have a comment, not just a like, but I have a comment. And I always click on that immediately. I'm like, I want to see what someone said. And then I want to see who said it. And they'll be like, oh, that's a chiropractor. And a majority of people might just go, okay, and move on. But we've generated a lot of new patients from people writing back on, oh, I didn't realize your office was down there. Usually it's a direct message, but they're like, I have a family of 5. We just moved here from Utah and we're looking for a chiropractor. Can we come in? And I'm saying, absolutely. So there's never like a sales pitch, but I will spend 30 minutes, 45 minutes going through those hashtags and just leaving engaging comments.
Yeah.
And sometimes I get told, who are you? I've had people say, why do you keep commenting on my pictures? I don't know who you are. And I said, I've had a break and I'll tell them, I'm very honest. I was searching hashtag Missoula. I just want to see what's going on around me. And you post a lot. I just comment on stuff I see. Yes. Like I'm very easygoing. So that's been a way that we also engage with the community in a more direct sense.
Yes.
When I can't get out into the community.
And both of those are just such good, organic, grassroots things to do. Like you said, it's sweat equity. I know that sometimes I will tell people, even if you just comment an emoji, now the caveat with that is don't just comment emojis on everybody's stuff all the time. That looks like a robot. But if you can comment a sentence, a whole phrase where you're genuinely saying something, that is really great. And especially if it is places that are close to you geographically, but also places that your patients probably hang out, where they probably eat, right, where they're probably having fun, the skating rink where they probably are playing hockey too. Those things, just having that thought of where are you going to have proximity and where are you going to have overlap, where they would be either interested because of what the place is, because it might be, health related, sports related, whatever, family related, but also the proximity, because clearly if it was something that was just diametrically opposed to your principles, then people would be like, that's right, different. So that might be a little bit harder, but why not?
Right. I'm not doing a lot of tags at CVS's and stuff when I go to buy nail clippers or something like that. Although I probably should. There was an old time chiropractor, a DE guy, who used to take his business cards and would go to the over-the-counter pharmaceutical aisle and would put his business card between every box of Tylenol, because he figured these people are probably have headaches or something like that, and they'd take a box and his card would be behind it. And he would get calls, and he's like, it was like a message from God. Yeah. And he would just go down the aisles and put his business card behind ibuprofen boxes and Tylenol boxes. And this was like in the 80s, 90s, when there wasn't as much social media and stuff like that. That was his like guerrilla marketing. Yeah. Was just littering the pharmaceutical aisle with his card.
Yeah. Well, I was talking about something like that with people this weekend where I was like, even chiropractic stickers or, something like that and putting those around. But I love all of these ideas. I love this story. So I'm going to put in the show notes where people can connect with you, where they
Please do.
can just see some of the simple things where you just hop on and it's chiropractic car talk and things like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Because these stories we're responsible to tell. And every time that I think about just stories that are just gathering dust in all of these offices and not being told. And like you said, there's so many different ways that we can share it, whether we're getting out in the community, whether we're, putting our business cards between Tylenol boxes. But I think the point of this podcast is also to just show chiropractors how many different stories are out there, to show the public how many stories are out there, and so that we can just get a couple degrees louder in all of this.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for your time. We're going to wrap it up for today, but come back next time for another story of Innate on what chiropractic doesn't cure.